Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tech Rules Uncovered. Actually, I already missed it last week because we had to reschedule our event last week due to sickness. However, if you already registered for the event on LinkedIn, we already found a new date. It's the 6th of July. So don't worry, you will get notified in advance so you won't miss the satellite data science session next time. Yeah, when you're here for the first time, you should know this format is all about tech roles, tech jobs that we are going to uncover every time with a phenomenal guest. And the biggest advantage of this live event is that you can participate. So if you have questions in between that you want to ask our guest, for example, just take the chance, use the chat on LinkedIn or YouTube, and then we are happy to answer that. Yeah, today's role that we are going to talk about is the product manager. And therefore, I invited a great guest to the show. And this one is really special to me today because it's a premiere. It's the first time that we are streaming to the US, and we're going to have a time shift of, I think, 8 hours or something like that, which is really amazing. And I really get goosebumps because that's a dream that I had that we are taking this format even more international and also bring insights from other continents to Europe, for example, in order to discuss what is happening in the tech industry right now. So, our guest, she is a VP in product management. And before her role at Leap, she already had different leading positions in product management, always in the tech industry. She always has, or not always, she also has experience in data science, data analytics, and that's why I find it quite interesting to have her here today and to bring her, experience to the show, what a product manager actually does. So, welcome, Katy Pusch. Hello.
Hello, it's so lovely to be here.
Hi, Katy. It's really cool to have you on the show and that you're taking the time. So, what time is it actually? I thought it's 8 hours.
Because
Like
I'm on the East Coast, it's not quite that much. I'm in Atlanta and it is 11 a.m. here.
it's 11 a.m. Okay,
Yep.
so like an early lunch break, right?
Sure. Yes.
So you're living in Atlanta, Georgia, right? Are you living
Mhm.
directly in the city center, or a little bit on the countryside?
I do live in the city, so my address is Atlanta, Georgia, but I don't live in like a downtown area you might be
Hmm.
imagining. So I do live in a neighborhood that's a little bit
Hmm.
away from the downtown area.
Great. So, as you might know, I'm always starting with some introductory questions, and the first one is also corresponding to your home city. It's yeah, it's regarding Atlanta. So, my first
Okay.
question is: I've never been to Atlanta, but just imagine I would have one day in Atlanta. What is the one site in Atlanta that I should visit?
I'm going to pick two. Uh, I'm gonna pick two. One of them is the Georgia Aquarium.
Mhm.
The Georgia Aquarium is the most wonderful aquarium I've ever been to. It's ruined all other aquariums for me. So it's beautiful. There are a great many very large tanks. So there's whale sharks and a lot of very large aquatic animals that you don't get to see other places. So it's just a very well designed aquarium. It's a great experience. I highly
Mhm.
recommend the Georgia Aquarium. The second one is I don't know if people outside the US know, but Atlanta is a very wooded area. There are lots of trees here and it's very beautiful. There's lots of hiking and opportunities to be outdoors in nature. And
Mhm.
so there is an area outside of Atlanta called Stone Mountain. It's a very large granite deposit.
Mhm.
And if you hike up to the top of Stone Mountain, then you get a very lovely, 360 view of the surrounding areas, but you also get a very lovely view of the Atlanta skyline. And so I really enjoy that hike.
Oh, that's cool. I love hiking, so that would definitely be a favorite of mine.
Yes.
I see currently that we have a problem streaming to LinkedIn. I already checked it. Meanwhile, unfortunately, I see no possibility to fix it right now. So everyone, I think Sebastian already wrote it in the chat. So sorry for the people that are watching or expecting us to be broadcasting to LinkedIn, but I think YouTube is working fine. So yeah, sorry for that. I don't know how to fix it right now. Okay. um, yeah, technical issues. I think that's
Yeah.
always a thing in live streaming. Nevertheless, let's continue with the next introductory question. Yesterday in our tech check up, you mentioned that you are into video gaming, for example, into the latest Zelda video game, Tears of Kingdom.
Mhm.
Um, you know probably that there are two worlds. Is this new world in the cloud, and there is this new underground world. What of the or which of these two do you find more interesting, the world in the cloud or the underworld?
I have not made it far enough in the game and to go in the underworld yet. So I started out on the cloud, and I enjoy that. So I don't have personal experience going into the underworld yet. I think I'm about to. My favorite thing about Zelda is being able to explore, and so I've been wasting hours and hours just wandering around and building things and and seeing what I can do in the space. So, because I haven't seen the underworld yet, I think I'm going to say that I like the cloud space more. Um,
Without spoiling too much to the people
sure.
that not
Yes.
have yet tried it out. Me myself, I haven't tried it yet. The new one. We are still playing the one before the what was it?
Breath of the Wild.
The Breath of the Wild, right? And I'm also more this person that try wanna collect all the items in the
Yeah.
woods and so on. And when it comes to very dangerous enemies, I'm more like, "Oh, no, I don't wanna die again in the game." Yeah, nice. Okay, so coming to the third question, you are an animal lover, right? You have a
I
cat
am.
and a dog.
Mhm.
Who is demanding more attention by you, the cat or the dog?
It depends on the time of day. It usually is the dog, though. It usually is the dog. I have a dog. She's a mix, but she looks roughly like a German Shepherd, and
Mhm.
so she's big, but she's a lap dog. She loves cuddles, so she's always on top of me. Sometimes if I'm in a meeting, on Zoom or on
Yeah.
Teams or something, I have to lock her out of the room because she'll come and look up at me underneath the desk, and then I'll
Mhm.
just start moving away from the screen, and it's because she's pushing me backwards, trying to get in my lap and give me hugs.
Oh,
So
yeah.
she makes appearances in meetings.
Yeah. Oh, it's so nice having dogs around the work because I think they are relieving so much stress, and
Mhm.
they are. I think when they are disrupting us, it's always in a good way. So
Yeah.
it's always fine to have animals around.
Yes.
And just you mentioned a German Shepherd, right?
Yeah.
You have another like relation
Yes.
to Germany as well.
Yes.
So without going into more details, but I know that you are speaking a little bit of German. Is there any German term or word that you find very funny or extraordinary that you always laugh about when you hear it or read it, or I don't know?
Uh, well, something does come to mind, but you might think it's just very, very silly. When I was first learning German, the funniest word that I felt like I had ever heard was die Zwiebel, the onions. And so I think that's my favorite German word
Die
is the
Zwiebel.
onions. Die Zwiebel. Yes.
Great, great. Okay, fine. Then that was the introductory part. So
Yes.
let's come to to our main part, talking about you and product management. So I already introduced you in the beginning a little bit, but maybe you also want to briefly introduce yourself and give us some insight about your career journey so far.
Sure. Absolutely. So probably a couple of pieces of information that are important for context. Product management is not my first career.
Hmm.
As you mentioned, I got into it by being into research and data science first.
Hmm.
So I was in market research roles, doing data analysis and data science, but also designing surveys and having focus groups and all sorts of research so that I could help inform the decisions that our company was making
Mhm.
to increase revenue and retention and our customer experience. That was a pretty good transition into product management, but I didn't have a technical background. I had like a research background and a
Mhm.
market background. Um, so I got that start, market research, transitioned into product management because I had put together a a market strategy that said that we had a big opportunity as a company to build a data product for this market
Mhm.
that we were in. And our CEO looked at me and he said, "Great, so why don't you be the product manager to build the data product?"
Mhm.
And I learned trial by fire. I didn't really have much training or anybody holding my hand to figure that out. I had a great mentor who was our chief research officer, who again was just an excellent data scientist, I would say, really. But I learned all of the product stuff really just on my own through trial and error.
Mhm.
So it was a fun time of lots of learning. The other context that might be helpful, just about my specific journey, that it's just the flavor of product management that I do, which is most of my work has been in the business to business
Mhm.
space. So I haven't worked on business to consumer
Mhm.
products nearly as much. It's been really B2B. So
Mhm.
those are two things about me.
Mhm. I find it quite interesting that you switched roles from more like an analytical role, a data role. If you come from a technical background or not, I think that doesn't matter. But you had worked as an analyst, and then you switched into this product role. And I observe it recently a lot, especially in Germany, that when data professionals think about how to progress in their careers, then going to product to first oftentimes being a product owner. So in the terms or in the yeah in terms of Scrum and so on, but later on, oftentimes they really like switch into a product manager role, which I find really interesting, and why I find this session with you now really insightful to get like a good idea what product management is. However, before we go into product management, you are working for Leap, and I saw that you're also wearing a nice sweater.
Yes.
Leap. Would you could you also give us some context what Leap is doing and
Yes.
providing for us?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. So, as I mentioned, I work in B2B spaces. And so, Leap, our product, is the complete platform for the professional contractor. So, we operate primarily in the United States, but we sell to people who do the work on residential remodeling. So, they go out to homes and they replace roofs, or they replace, siding and windows.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, environmental upgrades happening on homes right now, solar
Mhm.
panels. So contractors who do those sorts of things as well. Um,
Mhm.
and we provide everything that a contractor needs operationally to run their business and run it more
Mhm.
effectively, from production management to in-home sales presentations and quoting and
Mhm.
estimating. So we do the whole thing.
Mhm. So it's a software as a service
Yes.
product. Mhm.
Yes, yes, it is. We have both a web application as well as iOS and Android applications.
Mhm.
So,
Very interesting. I've never
yeah.
heard of that. I think we have probably similar tools in Germany and Europe, but I'm not so much into like housing and contracting and so on. So I don't know. So maybe for the audience, if there is someone watching us that knows maybe some similar service in Germany, just let us know. It would be really interesting to hear that.
Mhm.
Okay, interesting. And there you are a VP of product management. So it's a kind of, or it's a leadership position. However, how would you describe product management in general, in your words?
I've joined a lot of companies where we're building up the product team, and so I'm often asked to help educate the company on what is product
Mm-hmm.
management as well, because not all startups have product management. A lot of times, the CEO is filling the role that product might fill later on as you start to scale. So, one of my favorite definitions comes partly from Atlassian, which people may be familiar with
Mm-hmm.
Atlassian because of
Mm-hmm.
Jira. So they have a great one sentence definition that I like, which is product management is a function that guides every step of a product's life cycle, from
Mm-hmm.
development to positioning and pricing, by focusing on the product and its customers first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the thing that I would change about their definition a little bit is that I don't believe it is product management's role to be customer focused. That might be controversial.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we are market focused, because we
Mm-hmm.
need to make sure that we're identifying the opportunities that serve our target market as a whole, and not limiting ourselves to just our existing customer base. We need to look beyond that for
Mm-hmm.
solutions. But I think the important thing about Atlassian's definition is that it is an end-to-end life cycle of building, but also launching and ideating and coming up with the concepts for the product. So
Mm-hmm.
I this ties back into data. I'm obviously biased, but I love hearing that you're seeing a trend that data people are finding their way into product management, because I think it's a tremendous background for product specifically for that reason. Because if you can spot the trends that are happening in the data, then you can make much better decisions about what to build and how to position it in the market and how to
Mm-hmm.
price it and all of those things that we need to decide on. So
Mm-hmm. So, when we go deeper into exactly this kind of view, what would you say? What kind of tools are you using? Like from the data, from your data background, which kind of tools are you still using in your daily product management work?
mainly Excel.
Yeah.
I uh, I don't really use any fancy tools these days. If I, I think if you're working in a B2C space, then you have more of a need for tools like SQL,
Mhm.
and right, you're working with larger databases.
Yeah.
My data set right now that I'm working with is relatively small,
Okay.
so I haven't needed to brush off those data skills in a little while. It is largely Excel, and it's a lot of trying to figure out how to quantify things
Mhm.
that might elude quantification. So when my job was data and data analysis, I was doing very precise measurements, very precise analysis. Is this statistically significant?
Mhm.
When you transition into product, all of that sort of goes out the window. I'm glad that I have that background so that I know the correct way to do things, but you're being asked to make decisions with very few data points to connect
Mhm.
them together. And so you're having to ask yourself, how confident do I feel in this response, based really on context and not on strict
Mhm.
statistical measures. So a lot of what I try to do is find ways to quantify things that we may not have a very many data points to
Mhm.
quantify. So
Ah, okay. So it turned a little bit more in the background, or it's more something that helps you to make informed
yes,
decisions, but it's not your main focus anymore to take the data, analyze the data, and base every next product decision solely on data. So it's always a mixture, probably on qualitative
yes,
observations, customer feedback, but also some data that you have.
exactly, exactly. I think the skill set that has stayed with me the most is I think it's very valuable to know, the true correct way to do things, because
Mhm.
whenever possible, we try to collect enough data to be statistically significant and do things the right way. It's just not always possible. So you try not to get stuck if it's not
Mhm.
possible, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the other thing is being able to communicate
Mhm.
using data.
Mhm.
So that skill set just grows with you and allows you to be influential from entry level product manager all the way up to the executive suite, because everyone wants to be able to hear these stories in terms of data. What was the improvement? Why do we believe
Mhm.
this will be successful? How do we know? And
Mhm.
so that's been a very important uh, skill set from my data background that has definitely stayed with me.
Mhm. You mean data storytelling and so on.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Great. What were the other skills that you had to acquire when you moved from data to product management? Was there something that you haven't thought about before that you need in your daily job?
I think project management, product managers
Mhm.
are not project managers. There is a
Mhm.
different role, but um, to do product management well, I believe you also need to be able to forecast reasonably when will this thing be delivered? How do I know that I'm building the right thing? Am I giving myself enough space to have a beta program before we
Mm-hmm.
release it to the market? There's just lots and lots of moving pieces to make sure that you're bringing everybody together to deliver a unified experience. And so that was much more complex and intensive than what I was working with when I just needed to coordinate my data set and my data collection and my analysis. So I think that was one of the biggest things transitioning the product was that project management of bringing everybody together towards one goal.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So when we are thinking about your task and responsibilities in more details, you also provided me with some information about the typical task of a product manager. To be very clear here at this point, it's not exactly that, or this representation is not 100% corresponding to your position because you're
Correct.
in a leading position. We agreed that we are going to generalize it in a broader way, so to show more or less your experience what a product manager is doing. Could you also give us some more content or some more insight what actually it is? Maybe we start from the left and then we
Yeah.
can continue to the right. So you said that 30% of the time a product manager is spending on internal collaboration.
So that internal collaboration contributes to the project management. The internal collaboration can be on a few different topics. So
Mhm.
let me give you an example. At any given time, a product manager needs to be involved doing research, um, which could be like exploring just different concepts within the
Mhm.
company. You need to understand more information from support, from your salespeople, whatever the situation is. You could be ideating, which is really talking to design
Mhm.
about the types of work that they're doing. You could be collaborating with engineers on the solution that they're going to build. You could be collaborating with marketing on the launch that we're planning. So there's all of
Mhm.
these different activities that are happening all the time. And all of them require bringing people together towards a shared goal. So the largest portion of time in product management is spent bringing everybody together.
Mhm.
Um, and when you move into product management, your calendar can get a little bit overwhelmed because you do need to speak to people
Mhm.
to coordinate people, right? And to get everyone's feedback and thoughts and make a product enhancement the best that it can be. So it's a really important thing to be mindful of for someone who's transitioning from a different role into product management is that if you let it, your calendar can start to feel very overwhelming because there are lots of conversations that you need to have. But it's good to also block out some good focus time
Mhm.
on your calendar because if you spend all of your time talking to everyone else, then you won't have time to do your own work
True.
either. So just be careful.
True. So, would you summarize it most of all to stakeholder management? So, it can be internal stakeholders, but also customers, external stakeholders, maybe also other kind of interest groups.
The internal stakeholder management, I would say, is part of that internal
Ah,
collaboration.
okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep.
Really, really interesting. Yeah, cool. Yeah, focus time. I think you just mentioned it. So how do you do it? Do you have some kind of a routine that you are blocking a specific time at a day in order to fulfill some tasks that you have to do? Or is it by coincidence if you have, I don't know, a spot free between two meetings, then you use it for focus work?
It's a little bit of both. We don't have our stand-ups until a little bit later in the
Mhm.
day, 9:45 a.m., right?
Mhm.
Which is it's still morning time, but it's a little bit later in the day.
Yeah.
It's not like 8 a.m. So I pretty reliably have some time before stand-up to make sure that I'm focusing and planning and, making sure that I have time to just get my head on straight. Um, but then it's also I'll try to look at my calendar during that morning time of planning out my day and say like, okay, when should I move some meetings because I need to accomplish something and I don't have time to do it? Should I block out
Mhm.
this time so that nobody bothers me? Um, and so I'm usually doing it on a day by day basis. I also look at my calendar weekly, and so if I look and I see that it's just blocked the whole week, then I'll
Mhm.
on Monday morning, I'll start to make some changes to my week to make sure that I have a little bit of extra breathing space. It's a good prioritization exercise because you're like, do I really need to have this conversation this week? Or, is this more of a future looking thing? So,
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely agree to that. We are also using Jira recently in order to prioritize our work because also calendars can get quite full
yeah,
very, very fast. And I think that's a problem, especially if you grow in your career and you have more, yeah, exchanges with people, even though it's or doesn't matter if it's your team or if it's some external stakeholders. It's always good to have some free space, especially to breathe and to think
yes,
what
yes,
you're gonna do without or
yes,
not reacting all the time on external input, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And well, so that segues really nicely. So I want to push us ahead a little bit to scoping work because I,
Mhm.
I just
Yeah.
think what you just said is such a good segue. A lot of the scoping work that we have to do, this is scoping the next epic, the next product
Mhm.
increment, the next thing that we need to build, the next
Mhm.
priority. And those things are not straightforward to put together. It's nobody's
Mhm.
giving you the answer of what needs to be included in the scope or what's
Mhm.
most important. um, it comes together in a sort of disorganized way. And so it's very important to have that space on my calendar, even if I don't know what the deliverable is going to be out of
Mhm.
that time and space that I have on my calendar. It's just really important to be able to have that space, like you said, just to
Yeah.
think, just to sit
Mhm.
and think about a problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
So that's what scoping work is a little bit.
Mhm. Cool. Do you also have experience in working together with product owners that are a little bit more closely to developers, or do you think it's not needed if you have a product manager?
The most successful teams I've been part of had both product managers and
Mhm.
product owners.
Mhm.
Um, and so I know that there are different opinions in the industry
Mhm.
on that, but I really value the product owner role.
Mhm.
I have not been a product owner myself. That's one thing I didn't get to do on my career
Mhm.
journey, but I've worked with some just really tremendous product owners. I also believe that product owner is a career path on its own.
Mhm.
Sometimes people think, oh, you're a product owner and then you become a product
Yeah.
manager.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's what people want to do, but I think product owner is a very distinct skill set that if you just want to keep becoming a better and better product owner and grow your career that way, then that's a very good path. I just think that role is so valuable.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, cool. And then the next chunk is quite interesting. It's product management, and now it's getting really interesting because you already mentioned that product management is not project management. So, what exactly do you mean by project management?
So, product managers in some organizations get to work with project managers. And
Mhm.
so, if you get to work with a project manager, then you might spend less time doing project management yourself. But one of the things that's true about product is that you are accountable for getting the product delivered into customers' hands. You're not just accountable for scoping the right thing, you're also
Mhm.
accountable for making sure that it gets delivered.
Mhm.
And so the project management is coordinating all of the moving parts and pieces to make sure that it does get delivered
Mhm.
to customers. And it's if you get to work with a project manager where you can reduce that to like 5% of your
Mhm.
time, then that's fantastic. But most companies that I've worked with, right, product does need to work on that a little bit and make sure that we're coordinating things
Mhm.
appropriately. So
Yeah.
that's what that is.
Very insightful. Really, really cool to know that because I was always wondering what exactly is like of course, I know about the scoping and that a product manager is going through the different life cycles of a product and that he or she is like managing the more bigger picture of this whole product journey. However, there are many hands-on work as well in there. So this project management, for example, is is one example, and also scoping, and probably also the next one, this data analytics part, 10%.
I wish that it was more. Um, I was looking at this list and sort of reflecting on. I actually checked with my team. You know, I was like, "Is
Mhm.
this roughly accurate to what your day is?" And
Yeah.
it of course fluctuates, but yes, it's roughly accurate. I was trying to make sure that I showed the reality and not
Mhm.
what I wish it was.
Mhm.
But I do wish that it was much more time spent on data analysis and on external conversations. Both of those are really only about 10% of a product person's job. I think that if you have other strong teams and roles around you, that it would be great to increase those percentages.
Mhm.
But a lot of product teams that I've worked on, you know, if you're able to spend about 20% of your time understanding the market, the data analysis of the quantitative and then the external conversations of the qualitative, then that's a good start because there's also lots of product teams, the ones who act like project managers.
Mhm.
There's lots of product teams in the world who don't really talk to customers ever, and
Mhm.
that's oh, it's horrible. It breaks my heart when that
Mhm.
happens. So I wish it was even more, but if you have 10% of your time to explore data analysis, let me talk a little bit about what types of
Mhm.
data
Yes.
analysis.
Yes, true.
So a lot of this data analysis comes from your CRM, your Salesforce tool, if you're using Salesforce, because I need to understand what types of support tickets are coming in through our support team,
Mhm.
and what does that look like? Or another flavor of that, you know, what are our most used help articles online if you don't have a you know a support team that people call, but you have online help, right? What are our most used help articles? Where are people running into the most trouble? Um, it's where are our sales coming from? And so I'm trying to mix a little bit of product led as well as sales led flavors in here, depending
Mhm.
on what type of environment you're working on. But if you're working with a sales team, what are our win rates and which competitors are we coming up against most recently? Who are we winning from? Who are we losing from? Um, and if you're in more of a product led, right, what is our conversion rate? Are we using a freemium volume? So how many of those freemium customers are upgrading? Are they following the
Mhm.
path that we expect them to in the product to reach that value moment of understanding that this product
Mhm.
adds value to my day and is a wonderful
Mhm.
thing. Um, so there's all of that market data. There's also Jira data
Mhm.
of how if I get to work with a project manager, then I and a product owner, then I like it if they own the Jira piece of it. But the product manager should also be aware of how are our sprints going and are we hitting our sprint commitments? Is our velocity increasing or decreasing?
Mhm.
How many bugs do we have in our backlog? Is our bug backlog increasing or decreasing? And what types of bugs are they? So that's really why I wish it was more than 10% because that was just some of the types of data off the top of my head, and it's coming in from everywhere. And so the more time you have to really think about what that data means to you and to your priorities for your product,
Mhm.
the better. So
Mhm. Do you have the luxury to also have a dedicated data team at Leap, or is that like what you just mentioned? Is that or are you taking that responsibility because you have the background and the experience, and then you took it to the product management team? Because oftentimes when companies have the ability to have a data team, I think just what you just mentioned, oftentimes it's the task and the responsibilities of the data team. So how is it at Leap right now?
so some more context about my roles is I am usually joining companies that are scaling.
Mm-hmm.
And so product may be introduced for the first time, and we often don't have the luxury of a data team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in the future, I would love to, like, as we continue to grow and as we can support bringing on additional people to our team, I definitely will be bringing on a role. It's in my plans, it's on my wish
Mm-hmm.
list, to bring in a role that can focus on doing a lot of this data analysis. Because what you find when you don't have a data team is that the data governance, the data cleanliness, the confidence that the numbers I'm getting out of Salesforce are actually correct. There's nobody really looking into all of those
Mm-hmm.
details as a full-time job. And so, so it's a lot more difficult to get at some of the insights in those numbers than you would like. So I
Mm-hmm.
would absolutely love to bring on a data analyst. In the next year would be great, but we'll see when we so I love having a data role on a product team. I think there's a lot of specialized data analysis that happens as part of just product operations, um, but it's usually one of the last roles to be added on, because when you think about the most important things that you need to keep the business going, you need the product owners, to make sure that you're keeping the work with the engineers, great partnership, and then you
Yeah.
need the product managers to make sure you're thinking about what's next, and then the data analysts, can come a little bit later. They're not as mission critical to just keep the business going at first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. So, for the audience who are watching us right now on YouTube, if you have any further questions for Katy, use the chance. We still have some minutes left in order to answer your questions. Just ask your or type your question into the chat, and then we are happy to answer them. Meanwhile, we can continue with the next bucket. It's 10% ticket work.
Yes. So if I worked on a team that did not have a product owner, this would have been much, much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But even when you have a product owner, product managers, I believe, should help with ticket writing,
Mm-hmm.
should be part of the ticket writing process. Um, and this part fluctuates. If you're having a big week where you're trying to get a lot of work ready for the engineering team, maybe you're trying to get ready to kick off a project. So you're trying to get a couple of sprints worth of work written and refined with your product team in
Mm-hmm.
preparation for that, right? Then you may have a week where you're doing, like 80% ticket writing. But it all averages out, right? So you should be doing at least some ticket writing. But on a team with a product owner, then the product owner is primarily responsible for
Mm-hmm.
writing the tickets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you still have an eye on it to
Yes.
also maybe also give your input in terms of prioritization, for example, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
good. And then coming to the last bucket. Sorry for the how do you say abbreviation when we
Yes.
yeah external conversation. It means it's 10%. So you already mentioned that it's regarding talking to customers, right?
The reason I said external conversations and not just customer conversations is that sometimes
Mm-hmm.
speaking to your vendors
Mm-hmm.
or speaking to, other professionals who work in your same industry can be very valuable to making sure that you understand what's happening in the market and what's most important in the market. So that's why I made it more broad than just customer conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in my dream world, um, we could spend, 50% of our time having these external conversations,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that we need to bring this knowledge internally and make sure that we're very well aligned. But a product manager role has to be carefully balanced between bringing information in and then putting that information to work. And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, so what often happens, so this week I got to go to a conference for 2 days. And
Mm-hmm.
so 42 days of my week, 40% of my week was spent having external conversations all day, every day. And that was a great week. Um, so it can go a little bit like that, where you might have times where you get to go to a trade show or a conference or go out and visit a customer on site. And then you have a pretty heavy percentage that week of getting to talk to customers. But again,
Mm-hmm.
it balances out. So on average, you're probably
Mm-hmm.
at about 10% of having those external conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. It looks like a very yeah very interesting role. You have very different kind of tasks and responsibilities. On the one hand side, you are influencing the product and the direction and the roadmap. On the other hand side, you're taking feedback, you're talking to clients, you are testing new ideas, I think, with clients. You also do some analytical work, you do some hands-on project management work, and so on. So is there anything that you would recommend people? Is there any kind of yeah, how should I say that? Any kind of passion or any kind of skill people should bring in order to succeed as a product manager?
I'm going to say prioritization. Prioritization
Uh-huh.
is important for everyone, but you may have noticed from the way that I talk about some of the product work, there are just so many things happening
Mhm.
all the time.
Mhm.
And so it can be difficult to focus. And sometimes, if you have someone new to a product role trying to learn it, that's the part that they struggle with, is that if they don't have anywhere to focus, then nothing really gets done and
Mhm.
they don't get to deliver value for the organization. And so they have a really hard time in the role. And so prioritization is even more important for product management than any other role that I've been in, because you have to be able to say no to
Mhm.
other stakeholders as well as to yourself, because you might personally feel like, oh, this bug that a customer told me about, I believe that's so important. But if you say yes to every single time that you feel responsible for fixing that bug for the customer, then some of the bigger priorities for the company that are going to have an impact for the entire customer base, sometimes
Mhm.
those are the things that don't get done. So it's very important to be able to prioritize and focus and say no to a lot of things, so that you can, not because the thing you said no to isn't important, but because you need to be able to say yes to the things that are even
Yeah.
more important. So that's the number one thing. I think it's a soft skill and it's
Mhm.
self-discipline, but that's the most important skill, I think, coming into product from another role.
How did you learn it actually?
Um, That's a good question. I had a little bit of practice, because when I was doing the data analysis and the market research, I was having to manage up. I would get requests directly from my executive team, and I would have to explain to them, okay, well, these are the three things I'm working on. So if you ask me to work on this fourth thing, something has to push. Like, what would you like me to change? So I was practicing having those conversations, I think, throughout my entire career. um, I think the different flavor, coming into product management, is that it wasn't just requests from someone else that I was saying,
Mhm.
okay, you tell me which thing is more important.
Mhm.
I was also responsible for saying, I believe this thing is most important. And so this is what I'm going to work on. And I would say that that was trial and error.
Mhm.
I haven't always done a good job. I think that goal setting and reflecting every quarter, is part of what helps build the habit. Because if you're tracking your quarterly goals and you kind of look up 2 months through the quarter and you're like, oh my gosh, the thing I said that was most important, nothing's gotten done on it, then you have a moment to pause and reflect. And so I think goal setting for yourself, even if your company doesn't have a big goal setting process, but just setting goals for yourself so that you have time to reflect if you're
Mhm.
getting the most important things done, can be very helpful to building that skill.
Yeah. I would definitely agree to that. And I also think that it's a tough skill to master. However, I think you have to go through also making these bad decisions and also in
Yeah.
order to learn how to make it better the next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are already quite at the end of our session and our time that we have available. So I would like to come to my final question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So, the final question that I have is, what would you say is or had been your biggest career booster so far? Is there anything that you can mention that you did? Was it maybe a master degree? Was it maybe um, a person, a team, or maybe also a decision you took?
I'd like to say two things because one of them is a
Mm-hmm.
habit that I think anyone can do, and
Mm-hmm.
another one is honestly that I feel like I got a little bit lucky with one
Mm-hmm.
particular shift in my career. So the habit that I think anyone can do that's been a big career booster for me is I was lucky that very early in my career I had a manager who instilled the habit in me of you have one major professional development activity that you can do per year. You can request budget for it, but you drive that process. You tell me
Mm-hmm.
what it is that you need for professional development. You recommend the conference or whatever it is that you're going to go to, and we'll talk about it. It
Mm-hmm.
has to be approved, but it will most likely be approved. And so I always think about that. If it's been 10 months and I haven't done anything to invest in myself or take time to build a skill, then I still try to do that. I still try to make sure that there's a major activity that I get to
Mm-hmm.
engage in at least once a year to build professional development. And I think that if you do that on a repeated basis, then it's like investing money, right? You get returns, it compounds on itself, and it's very helpful. The other thing was an accident that I
Mm-hmm.
think just was very lucky, which was that shift in my career of I was doing market research and um, I think I had, without transitioning into a much bigger company, and I knew that I wanted to stay working in small companies. But like I mentioned, for a smaller company, sometimes a data specialist role is a little bit of a luxury. There's not a big career path for data specialists, data analysis, data science, market research at the size company that I really wanted to continue to grow at. So I had kind of reached the top of what I was going to be able to do at that size of company. And that's when it wasn't my idea. That's when the CEO tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I think you should try product
Mm-hmm.
management." Um, so I feel very lucky that I've been able to still focus on data in that role because data is just still so important to me. But it's taken a different flavor, and I don't think that my career would have continued to advance um, in the way that it did if I hadn't made that transition at that point in my career over to product management. Um, and just to emphasize, just because I know people might be watching this with very different levels of experience, if you go work at a big company, you can absolutely keep going higher and higher and higher and specialize on data. Um, I just was choosing not to go work at one of those big companies, and so there was a different path that made a little bit more sense for me. I just didn't know it until our CEO suggested it to me. So I feel lucky that that happened.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. It's nice to have people around that see talent in you and then they are also supporting it. So, as in your case. Katy, thank you very much for taking the time talking to us and giving us
Thank you.
your or sharing your experiences with us here. I also want to thank you to people that were attending us today. Unfortunately, we had these issues with LinkedIn. Next time, we try to figure it out why it happened and how to fix it. Maybe also during the stream. However, if you want to join us for our next episode, next Thursday, we are gonna have a guest, and she is, yeah, sharing her experience as an analytics engineer, a role that is still quite new in the data space, and I'm looking quite very much forward to know what exactly is the difference now between a data engineer and a data analyst, and what exactly is now the role of an analytics engineer. If you also want to know more about that, join us and ask your questions. If you don't want to miss anything, especially for our events, follow us on our LinkedIn page and maybe also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It would help us a lot to grow and also reach a higher and bigger audience. So, thank you very much. We will end it up here. We are already 5 minutes over time. Thanks again, Katy. It was so much fun having you with us. And I wish you a very nice day. And to the audience, I would say, yeah, have a good evening. And Katy, if you want to have the last word, it's on yours.
It's been such a pleasure. And if you are in the United States, have a good day.
Have a good day. Bye bye.
Bye.